This is a Phantom Thoughts RPG a Day 2025 episode. For this year, for RPG a Day, I will attempt to use the prompts to create elements of an adventure module. So hopefully by the end of the month, I'll have everything you need that you put together party characters and go on an adventure. RPG a Day 2025, Day 16, Overcome. So to overcome means to face an obstacle or suffer a setback and then defeat it, avoid it, or move beyond it, and or face a limitation and go beyond it, improve. That could be something physical, something mental, something emotional, something spiritual, and it could be a personal obstacle or something that is an obstacle for a group. In fantasy RPGs, obstacles can be forces of nature, whether natural or the will of gods. It can be rival factions, tribes, political opponents, war bands, adventuring groups. It can be economic rivals. It can be monsters or creatures lurking in the wilderness or in the darkness of the underground. We know from the roles that we did for previously in the Journey day that was talked about Journey, that the caravan, the PCs might escort, will face at least two obstacles to overcome: crevices caused by an earthquake and large boulders blocking their way. The major obstacle for the PCs, if they accept the Lamia Noble's quest or mission, will be whatever creature or creatures are occupying the former Lamia Noble's lair. So to try to help figure out what that is and get some ideas, I looked at the tables in the monster manuals, in the Monster Manual 2, and in the Fiend Folio, especially the Fiend Folio, because it had a more diverse collection of possibilities. First, I looked at what the noble itself. The Lamia Noble is a 10 hit dice creature with high intelligence, ability to charm, some illusion abilities, wisdom drain. So a very strong creature. It's listed on the tables in the Fiend Folio as being on level 7 of a dungeon. So I looked at level 7 and some at level 8 at some other creatures that could be running across. And I ran across several interesting potential combinations. Several of them were creatures with psionics, with similar hit dice. Some of them were creatures that were there were several creatures from the elemental plane of Earth. So, just to give some examples, you had them, of course, Mind Flayers, a very powerful creature in Dungeons and Dragons, and one that has become well established in the world of D&D, such as it is. The Shadoo, which is a creature which looks like a Pegasus with a bearded man's face, is the illustration with it in the monster manual. Coatl, which is a winged serpent. Greater Basilisk, an Umberulk, which has, a gaze attack and can cause confusion with that gaze attack. Well, it's not necessarily a gaze attack. That's not how it's listed, but it's if you look into its eyes, you can become confused. A Zorn, which is another canonical AD&D monster that can pass through stone and eats essentially stone and metal. Hydra, and also a variation on the Hydra, the Pyro Hydra, which is Hydra with breath weapon, breathing fire. The Purple Worm, another canonical D&D monster. Shambling Mound, which is a large mass of intelligent moss, essentially. Vampire, a giant slug, and Neo Otiug, which is essentially a giant, a carrion eater that feeds on the waste of other creatures, and it mentions that it sometimes teams up with other creatures. Other creatures let it tag along because it eats the offal that they generate, and is a pretty powerful creature in its own right. So looking through these, several of them fell into some major categories. The Tao is another one. The Tao is related to the Ifrit and the Jinn, with limited wish and the ability to change self. And the Tao and the Greater Basilisk and the Zorn are all listed as being from the elemental plane of Earth, which I thought was interesting because we have that obstacle that the caravan is going to face, which is giant crevices caused by an earthquake. So these could be creatures that something within the planet, within the area that caused this earthquake is related to the plane of Earth, and that's how they came to be at this location. Or it could also be that there's a relation to the plane of Earth in the area that essentially causes the earthquake and causes earthquakes every once in a while because it has that relationship with that elemental plane, and that's how creatures travel back and forth. And maybe even the passage of creatures triggers some of these type of seismic events. So one or more of those could be part of the group of creatures that are in the lair because of that relationship with the elemental plane of Earth. There's some kind of portal or passage that occurs there. Then you have the Shadu and the Coatl, which are powerful, high intelligence, lawful good creatures. And the Shadu entry in the Monster Manual mentions that it does travel the world, furthering the cause of lawful good and aiding lawful good creatures. Being that a Lamia Noble is inherently chaotic evil, it could be that one or both of these creatures are present because the Lamia Noble was present. It was a reaction on the battle of law versus chaos, or good versus evil, attempting to drive chaotic creatures off, especially because of perhaps the presence of the artifacts and magical items related to the god that the Lamia Noble worships, and not wanting a chaotic evil creature to have possession of such power. Then you have a group of creatures that are low or non-intelligent creatures: the giant slug, the purple worm, the shambling mound, the hydra. These are all creatures with limited intelligence. A chimera, that was also one. I don't think I mentioned it before. That they could all be of limited intelligence creatures that are just doing their thing. They're monsters being monsters, and maybe they were drawn by the magic in the area where this god's artifacts are. The Neo Otiug is a very average to very intelligent creature, but it would be because of its nature, it would kind of hang around with the shambling mound, the purple worm, the giant slug, eating their leavings, as it were, and providing them with extra muscle, which makes it easier for them to overcome obstacles and gain food of their own. And then, of course, you just have the rival intelligent creatures that are evil creatures that could be essentially rivals of Lamia Nobles, seeking the power of their own to have influence over the area: the Mind Flayer, the Vampire, the Umber Elf. So you have several groups, different types of creatures that could be working in concert or in competition and have reason to be in the Lamia Noble's lair to have driven the Lamia Noble off, and powerful enough with different enough abilities that the Lamia Noble's strengths of charm and illusion might not work on them, and therefore would be probably driven off. And something like the Zorn could even be a situation where I had considered initially in my mind that the Lamia Noble ambushed the merchant on their way on the journey that the merchant was on, and it charmed them and taken them over and probably eaten most of their expedition, returning with just a few, or maybe just themselves. posing as their new mate, their new wife, but they'd ambushed them on the way. But the presence of, say, a Zorn might be, now that we have rolled up in a previous episode, that there is some type of mine, some type of special metal that the Lamia noble is sending the caravan to take control of, to control the trade of. It could be that the merchant was in fact successful. That's how the presence of this mine is known, and that there were samples of these special metals with the caravan that the merchant was with, and that the Zorn is attracted to that it's, especially tasty meal for it. So there are a lot of distinct possibilities here in terms of motivation for these creatures, and in terms of the challenges that they would face, and there could be different combinations. There could be multiple groups within this layer setting, and it raises the possibility of creating perhaps even a table where you would roll up one or more groups to be in the layer, so that even within this module, this adventure, different parties, different groups of players running it would have different experiences. So that is overcoming an obstacle, and that is some ideas of applying that to the adventure I'm trying to create. Thanks for listening. The opening theme of this podcast was Strength of the Titans, and the closing music is Late Night Radio, both from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 4.0 license. If you have any thoughts or feedback, you can get in touch with me by leaving me a voicemail on my Google Voice number, 864-209-1441. That's 864-209-1441. Or through SpeakPipe at www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. That's www.speakpipe.com/Phantom Thoughts. Or you can send me a message or an audio file on Discord, where I can be found the Pink Phantom, or through email, phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. That's phantomthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. I don't have to play or read your feedback on the podcast if that is not your preference. Just let me know.